Abduction will today present information to the police.
The car is not in Impala's name. The car is leased from an individual, and we had it out, yes, but it's not in our name.
Mr. Dondo, the individual that you say the car belongs to, he's been captured on record as saying that he was unaware that his vehicle was hired out to Imperial. So he points a finger at Imperial having custodianship of the vehicle at the time. Are you denying this?
No, the owner of the vehicle, he was aware. We've got a contract with him. And if you read the comments, the story on Zim Live, from what I saw, he actually said the car came back with some damages on it. And the car, I think, is back with us again for another hire. So the owner of the car was aware, and we've got a contract to that effect.
And the very article that you speak about actually, in fact, says the owner said he had no idea that the car had been released to a car hire company. So then he got in touch with Impala Car Rentals, and the proprietor said, yes, the vehicle was hired by one of our regular customers. So let's drill down to the more important facts. Who is that customer, and where was he with the vehicle at the time of the alleged abduction?
We got the name of the customer. Apparently, yesterday when I got this story from Mr. Matutu, who is, I think, the editor of Zim Live, because I know him, I gave him the name of the person who had the vehicle. I gave him the address, I gave him the phone number. But to my surprise, when the story was running on his website, there is no name of the hire. But the name is there. I gave him the name, I gave him the address and the phone number.
So what are you implying? Because there are other suggestions that, in fact, you may have given him the wrong details.
No, what I gave him is what we have. He phoned me and he explained to me, and because I know him, and I said to him, you know what, I saw this story in the morning, and I felt pity for the young boy, and I didn't know that it's a vehicle. Let me call my office, let me check who hired that vehicle. I got the details, and I forwarded to him. So I spoke to him in the afternoon, and to my understanding, it was above board, everything was in order, until I saw his article saying that we have refused to divulge the information, which is wrong, because he has got the name with him.
Okay, so are you able to share with us the details? Is this a person, a private citizen? Is it a company, an entity, a business person? Who is the owner of the vehicle?
The owner of the vehicle, or the person who had the vehicle.
Are you able to share with us who the owner of the vehicle is?
You want to know the person who had the vehicle, or you want to know the owner of the vehicle?
I'll repeat the question, Mr. Dondo. Are you able to share with us the name of the owner of the vehicle?
Yes, I can show you the owner of the vehicle. It wouldn't be an issue. I'm sure you're getting it wrong. What do you want? Do you want the person who hired the vehicle?
I've been very clear about this, Mr. Dondo. You say you have a bona fide contract with this person, to whom the person who owns the vehicle and the person that you hired out the vehicle. Are you able to share those details with us? Saying you have no problem with it, Mr. Dondo, but can you please, are you in a position to share that with us? The person who owns the vehicle and the person who hired the vehicle. You say you freely gave it to the editor. So are you in a position to share that with us? You either say yes or no.
Let me explain. What I shared with the editor is the person who hired the vehicle. The person who owns the vehicle, the editor, he has that name. So he didn't inquire from me. What he inquired was who hired the vehicle, and I gave him the name.
Okay, so you shared the name with that, and you're saying that you're unable to share that with us. So what has happened in between? Has that individual been found since?
Sorry, I'm missing you. Come again.
What has happened since? You say you've shared the information. Has this person been reported to police? Have they been found?
No one has come to us besides journalists. But what I'm going to do tomorrow morning, I'm going to make a police report to say I've seen this vehicle. We hired from our business, from our company, and we've seen it on CCTV, and we'll give you the details. So
what you're saying is that you are willing, contrary to reports, to cooperate with law enforcement officials?
100%. Why not? We have all done that. We have lost cars. We have had armed robberies. People, hired cars.
All right, news back here in South Africa. A number of events have taken place in KwaZulu-Natal. These include political and, societal issues in general. Our reporter, Jayed-Leigh Paulse, is standing by to take us through some of the big stories that dominated headlines this week in the province. Jayed-Leigh, a very good morning to you.
A very good afternoon to you, Blaine. And I must say it's freezing cold in KZN and we're not used to this weather. Well, like you said, a couple of stories, national stories that have really been coming out from a very cold province, which is a first for us. But we're going to go straight into it, Blaine. We obviously know the matter of Zandile Gumede. We've seen Ayanda Mhlongo covering that leg for us, as well as Umtwalume, Vusi Khumalo trailing that part of the South Coast, looking at that serial killer, as well as other stories coming from, KZN with Nomdi Khadebe trailing also farm murders, violence perpetuated against women and children, and also political killings. So there's a lot to get into in the segment of KZN's Wrap, and I'm going to go straight into it. Let's play Ayanda Mhlongo's, clip on her crossing as well as her package on Zandile Gumede.
All comrades who are charged are directed to step aside from their responsibilities immediately, both from the movement and the state, and for them to appear before the Integrity Commission.
A surprise decision by ANC leaders in the province. Provincial party leaders have backpedaled just 8 days after the corruption-accused former mayor took the oath as member of the provincial legislature. This, they say, comes after public outcry over Gumede's deployment. The party came under heavy criticism for the move. Gumede is currently out on bail on charges of fraud and corruption relating to a 430 million rand Durban solid waste tender deal. Mabuya Khulu is facing fraud and corruption charges. In defense of this about-turn, party leaders say it's about saving the party's image.
The ability of the ANC to self-correct is important. And in this case, we are saying as the ANC, yes, politically, there was a decision taken. We have implemented it. There is a response from the society. And we must show that we are listening to the society too, while we don't undermine the rights of the comrades who are affected. The PEC is unanimous and united around this view that while it is important to protect the right of members, it is equally important to protect the integrity and the standing of the African National Congress in the society.
While the two will be suspended from participating in party activities and Gumede from her duties as MPL, she will, however, continue to receive her salary.
We know that the next cry is about paying people who are not at work, and that we are conscious to that. We even discussed it. So we are going to ensure that the matter is expedited and handled within a short space of time.
The decision will also extend to leaders at local government level and those serving in lower party structures. All the affected members will not be permitted to contest conferences until they are cleared by the Integrity Commission. Meanwhile, this announcement comes as KZN leaders were expected to meet with the National Executive Committee to discuss Gumede's deployment. They say the national leadership had long been aware of the planned decision to redeploy Gumede to the provincial legislature. Ayanda Mhlongo, SABC News, Durban.
And a very good thanks to my colleague there, Ayanda Mhlongo, for a very comprehensive package on Zandile Gumede and all the political tensions and atmospheres we have been experiencing here in KZN. But to break it all down for us, Blaine, I am joined by political analyst Becky Umgome Zulu, who's going to be talking about Gumede's deployment and their rescinding and everything around her asking to take leave but still receiving a salary at legislature. Prof, it's been a very interesting week just looking at the political tensions surfacing here in KZN. Gumede being deployed to the legislature, now being asked by the ANC to step aside. What do you make of all this?
No, it's very interesting indeed, Jayed, and I think we should not be surprised because there are a lot of issues at play here. On the one hand, you interpret this situation from a constitutional point of view, wherein we are told that everyone is assumed innocent until proven guilty. So I think that when the provincial leadership of the ANC in fact took her to the legislature, they were using the constitution saying that as much as she has been implicated in certain ill doings, but then there is no court that has found her guilty. So from that standpoint, the leadership of the ANC was right. Unfortunately, there were responses from the electorate, and most of them were not happy about the way in which the ANC handled the matter. As the Premier then said yesterday and the day before, that they had to listen to the electorate, listen to the citizenry, and then respond to that. So I think it was partly because of that reason that they had to rescind their decision. But most importantly, this happened at the time when the ANC was preparing for its meeting, the National Executive Committee meeting, wherein KZN was supposed to explain to the national leadership as to how they arrived at this decision. So they had to cater for that as well. So in a way, they preempted what was going to happen at the meeting and then decided to act proactively. And then that's the decision they took to then say Zandile Gumede and Honorable Mike Mabuya should step aside. But what is interesting for me is that Honorable Zandile Gumede is going to continue getting her salary. And nothing is being said about Mike Mabuya who has also been asked to step aside. So then the question is, what is it that is happening here? I think that the president is pressed between the rock and the hard place. On the one hand, he wants to leave a legacy that he tried everything possible to do things right for the organization. But then in so doing, in my view, he's over-ambitious and is in fact in a panic mood, which means that some of the things that he says, some of the things that he does are in fact unconventional in the ANC, including the letter that he wrote saying that anyone who is accused of any ill-doing should step aside immediately. So there are a number of things that are happening, and the president in fact is either ill-advised or he doesn't take advice at all.
And I mean, just listening to Ayanda's package there, I also get a sense that, you know, a lot of political parties are too not happy with what's happening with the Gumede situation here in KZN. I spoke to the IFP, the DA and EFF yesterday, and the general public as well, Prof. People are asking questions as to why is someone in power when they are standing fraud charges, and why are they going to be asked to sit at home, take a leave of absence, but still getting an exorbitant amount of money at the end of the month?
Yes, that is part of the complexity, and the reason is clear for me, because as long as someone has not been found guilty, then you have a problem, because if you say you are not going to be paid, and the person can take you to court and say on which grounds, because no court of law has found me guilty. But that is part of the reason. The other reason is that some of the people who are supposed to in fact come tough on those who are implicated, they themselves have their own problems. So then it's not easy for me to be tough knowing for sure that I will need you on the other side of the river. So that is also another explanation as to why you find a number of leaders. Right now we're talking about Mike Mabuya, we're talking about Zandile Gumede, but there are many others, which in fact brings me to another point that if the ANC says that the two must step aside, The question will be, who else has been implicated?
Yes.
And have those people been treated the same way? Starting with the president, it doesn't have to be guilty. But the fact that there are questions raised, for example, about the money that was raised for his 2017 campaign, and people will be asking the question. In his 7-page letter, he said anyone who is implicated, not anyone who is guilty, but anyone who is implicated must step aside. Then the question would be, why can't it do the same? That is what we've started hearing now. People like Tony Yengeni, like Mzwandile Masina, saying that anyone, literally anyone, including the president, if you are implicated, you should step aside. So basically, the ANC has set a precedent. The question is, are they going to maintain it?
And I think these are the discussions at NEC at the moment.
Absolutely.
Now. That's why the letter from former President Jacob Zuma also came out to light, questioning, that other letter saying that, you're asking people to step aside if they are, standing for charges, but you have to look internally as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, I read that letter with a keen interest, because I think that there are certain instances where our current president has exposed himself. First of all, when he assumed this office, he talked about the new dawn. I was one of the people who asked the question, where does the issue of the new dawn come about? Because you have a policy conference wherein the party agrees these are the policies we're going to implement on assuming office. Once that has been agreed to, you then have an elective conference. It doesn't matter who you elect. Whoever is elected is going to implement the same policies. So the issue of the new dawn for me does not arise. It doesn't arise for President Ramaphosa as much as it doesn't arise for Emmerson Mnangagwa in Zimbabwe. So that is the second point. But then the other mistake that the president made was when he went to Davos and then he talked about the 9 lost years under President Zuma's leadership. The question was, where was he? Because he was the deputy president of the ANC and he was the deputy president of the country. So if there are 9 lost years, obviously then he would have been part of it. So what is he going to do differently this time, and what is he going to use as the basis of his argument? Because he'll be implementing the same policies, and by and large he'll be working with almost the same people that a former President Zuma was working on. And then the letter itself poses a number of questions. Why didn't he go to the structures of the ANC to talk about internal matters? Why did he decide to go public? Those are some of the questions.
And I think we're going to be waiting for our political reporter there, Samkelo Maseko, just to bring us all that information with regards to what's happening behind the closed doors. Prof, very quickly, just, we're gearing up for a very important year next year. This Gumede situation where she was put into power and then asked to move aside, will it create further, rifts between the party members?
It definitely will, because as much as our political leaders are denying that there is factionalism in the ANC and in the alliance, it's obvious, it's out there in the open. So depending on which camp you belong to or you are assumed to belong to, even if the decision taken by the political leadership, whether at the provincial level or at a national level, it will be interpreted in that context. So whatever the president and his leadership does will be interpreted in the context of the factions. And for as long as the ANC is divided, it is going to lose some seats. But then, fortunately for the ANC, the opposition is in disarray, which means that even if the ANC is making mistakes, the opposition parties fail to grab the opportunity and then present themselves as the alternative. So that's the only thing that will keep the ANC going, despite the internal squabbles that we've seen, despite the weaknesses that we've seen, and all other things. So it will still survive simply because the opposition is not doing its job.
Thank you so much there for the blow-by-blow commentation. Prof, I think we're gearing up for a very exciting time just looking at the country, but also I think a lot of things are going to come out the skeletons as we look into this matter and, the various provinces, especially in terms of corruption. That was Beki Mngome Zulu, the political analyst, just talking about Zandile Gumede's redeployment to the legislature and then asking the ANC there for her to step aside. Blaine, a lot of political issues here in KZN, but I must make mention of the fact that there's also been a lot of violence in KZN, and Mlondi Khadebe and myself have been trailing some of the stories that have come out of the province. I'm just going to be going to a quick package that relates to some of the violence there in Taylor's Halt, where we saw a family of 8 being gunned down in 2 separate incidences, and then it came to light that it was a family feud and that they were indeed killing off each other. Let's go there quickly. Taylor's Halt here
Drive-by shootings and murders have escalated over the years. As the body count climbs, the Ngobo family and relatives continue to become the targets of killers. The Ngobo family own construction and trucking businesses. They've been embroiled in a family feud for 10 years. This week, 3 men were killed in a drive-by shooting in the early afternoon. The incident led to angry confrontations. Hours later, 5 women related to the victims were gunned down in their home. Their killers did not spare anyone. Dingeni, Zodwa, Tobeka, Sipelele, and 16-month-old Tandolwetu Nxele were murdered. We sat down with a family member who has gone into hiding. Scared and afraid, she tells me that the family is divided and that innocent people have lost their lives caught in revenge attacks.
Another wife of that dead shot at October is married to the woman from that family. That's why we are related from Nele and Ngobo.
So it's a family feud?
Yes.
What is the feud about?
I don't know what is the feud about. We don't know at all what's going on from their families. Everyone is gone now.
She says her entire family was wiped out, her father and 2 brothers.
They shoot my brother at a hand with them. They shoot in 32 bullets. In March, something like March, they shoot another brother from the family. But we don't understand what's happening. In October, we shot my father and that brother same time in the car, then already dead.
How does it make you feel that families are fighting each other and people are dying?
It's so scared now. Too much, so scared.
She is now on the run and too afraid to return home.
What is it that you are scared of the most?
We're hiding because we're scared to come with these people because we know.
You know who they are?
Yes.
On the fatal night which saw her 5 family members killed, the family member says she made several calls to the police station, but police officers arrived at the scene hours later.
If you come to this police station, we don't take even 15 minutes to go that place. Even the police, we didn't help. They didn't help at all. With my opinion, even the stage must be closed because there is no help here.
Meanwhile, the provincial police say they did attend to the shooting and that a special task team has been established to investigate the murders.
I'm not aware of any incident that the police didn't attend to, every incident. But our concern is that this matter is not being resolved. And the Provincial Commissioner has now roped in the Department of Community Safety and Liaison to mediate with the family so that hopefully we can bring lasting peace in that area. From what we gather, people at this stage don't want to sit around the table and looking at rather resorting to violence to resolve this conflict. And I don't think violence can resolve any conflict.
The woman says that if the family does not bury the hatchet, many more innocent people will die. Local traditional leaders tried to intervene, but failed to stop the killings. Jayed-Leigh Paulse, SABC News, Pietermaritzburg.
And you know, that story was just one of the stories of violence told here in KwaZulu-Natal. There's been other stories as well. I must make mention of the fact that my colleague, Mlondi Khadebe, is actually on his way to Newcastle now. Yesterday, he covered a story about a national bikers protest, protesting against the ongoing violence and killing of farmers. And just this morning, another farmers were killed in Newcastle. He'll be going there now to interview some of the community members and speak to those affected. And this is just the ongoing violence that we've been experiencing in KZN. Several murders, several shootings, drive-by shootings, like you saw now in this package at Taylor's Halt, as well as Adams, and also political killings. But one has to ask the question, is this new? Are these killings coming out because of frustration from people because of the nationwide lockdown? Or is it just merely that the reporting of certain journalists have now brought it to light? I am joined by criminologist Nomala Gopal. She'll be unpacking all of that for us this morning. Thank you so much for joining me, Prof. I must just go straight into it. KZN has been put in the media and the news for all the wrong reasons. It's said that KZN has also surpassed the Western Cape with violent crimes. Is this just new, or is it the fact that, there's more reporting on these matters, from farm murders to Untrauma, serial killers, as well as femicide?
Good morning, Jade. Good morning to your listeners. And, of course, thank you for the opportunity to have me here today. I think you rightfully point out that the COVID-19 period has actually drawn our attention to, or has made us realize more and more the kind of violence that's happening around the country. And I think you're also right when you say that it's probably the fact that we're having greater visibility and greater reporting in terms of the violence in KZN as opposed to the Western Cape. I also want to draw attention to the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has given us the space, government and civil society, to start focusing on those issues that we probably didn't focus on previously. Violence against women is an age-old problem. Violence in the Western Cape, I think there was greater emphasis on violence in the Western Cape, and as a consequence of that, we may have neglected the violence that has been happening in KZN. But I think what has really pushed the issue of violence in KZN is particularly the murders in Mtwalume. And of course, we know the whole country is concerned and in panic mode almost in terms of what's happening in KZN at the moment, including the fact that, as you reported, the most recent killing, the farm attack. So I think that essentially is what's happening right now. And I think of course the pandemic has drawn us into panic mode. And when we are in panic mode, there's greater fears, there's greater anxieties, and there's also a far greater awareness in terms of what's happening around us. And it also created the opportunity during lockdown to have greater social media communication. And I think these various efforts have actually just shown us that that there's greater attention.
That's true.
Portrayed on violence, for example.
Now, my colleague Vusi Khumalo has been trailing the Untrauma murders, and we've seen his packages, detailing where the bodies were found. Just yesterday, there was another charred body found on the side of the road. Police not too sure if it's a female or a male. They're still investigating, and I suppose that will also come to light, and whether it remains to be seen whether that will be the sixth body, female body, to be found in Untrauma. As a criminologist, I can only imagine the community living there are living in fear, just knowing that there's someone that's operating like this. And if you've been following the case back at home and you're listening to this interview, you know that the suspects that were taken in for questioning, one died in custody, the other one was released because there wasn't sufficient information. Living in that community and knowing that there possibly could be more one people. Do serial killers work together? Just can you break that down for us, the psyche of this individual who's gone on a rampage?
Sure. So, Jade, traditionally, and literature and studies would have it, that serial killers don't usually operate in pairs. And of course, there's a great deal of literature which speaks to why serial killers do what they do in the first instance. Oftentimes, serial killers would commit these series of crimes because they get some rush out of it. It's an adrenaline rush. It's the media, it's the country that are focusing their attention on the serial killer, and that is what the serial killer is looking for. All of this attention, etc. So for me, it was quite strange when I heard the possibility or the probability of the serial killing in Mtwalume having 2 people involved. And of course, it's also quite strange and to some extent ironical that the one decided to hang himself. So I think that puts in a different perspective to what we're thinking of in the meantime, that there could possibly be 2 people. So, and I think people are asking, civil society is asking the right question. If he was the serial killer and he's hanged himself, and then suddenly we see the emergence of another body, so was he the real serial killer, or is the serial killer still out there in the community at large? And I think rightfully, again, you point out the panic and the fear of the community. And usually, of course, this is very traumatic for the community. And when there's trauma, there would be a physical and an emotional reaction. The physical reaction is usually panic, anxiety, fear, and other physical signs. When it comes to the emotions, there's a great deal of fear, there's a great deal of anxiety, there's a great deal of anger as well. And the anger would usually manifest itself against either the killer, him or herself, or the anger against themselves, the community themselves. And that's because they feel helpless. Why couldn't we have stopped this? What have we not done to have stopped this? While it is understandable, I think the community needs some kind of awareness and education, and even some reassurances that it's not them. And I think in that way we would have less fear and less panic, and perhaps then people would start to focus on finding clues, real clues, finding solutions to how this serial killer could actually be apprehended. My biggest worry, I think, at this point is that the longer it takes to apprehend the serial killer, the more the situation will become normalized. And I think when a situation is normalized, then people will let down their guard. There's less security around us. And of course, that provides a fertile ground for the serial killer to attack again. Yeah. But having said that, I also want to quickly, if we have a minute or two, I want to zoom into this issue of violence and violence against women. And, when at the end of apartheid, the big struggle for us was the issue of race. And I think one of the struggles that we dropped and we neglected was the issue of sexism. And the struggle against women, we haven't taken up the struggle against women very seriously in our country, for example. I remember at the time when the cabinet had a reshuffle, or parliament had a reshuffle, and we had more women representing the country because of the large number of women citizens. But I'm not sure that was what we needed. I think what we need is a discourse on how women should be treated as human beings. How do men, whether they're in the state, at the level of state, the level of institutions, how do men start changing the discourse of how women should be treated? I also think that we place too much of attention on men as perpetrators. How much of attention do we pay on women who are the victims of violence? Have we profiled women who remain in those violent relationships? And if we are able to do that, and if we start doing that, then we will be able to save hundreds and thousands of women who remain in those relationships, empower them to remove themselves from violent situations and violent relationships. Yeah. So I think there has to be some kind of balance, and of course the state needs to come to the party where women rely on men for financial support and believe that the yin and yang principle where the child needs both parents, and we empower women and socialize them differently, but also to have the resources for where women can go to and feel safe, feel empowered, and are able to then reduce the levels of violence in the country as well.
And I think it's so important that we're talking about this. We're now coming to the end of Women's Month, end of August, and we need to actually take up arms like Lillian Diedrichs, like Mom Sophie de Bruyn, who marched the Union buildings in 1956 and said, enough is enough with apartheid. We also as women need to take up arms and fight against this gender-based violence, fight against femicide. Thank you so much for your input on the violence here in KZN, Professor Nomala Gopal. She's a criminologist here in KZN, just talking about the violence that has been perpetuated against women and children, femicide, but also talking about the ongoing murders in Umthwalume, which has been taking, most of people's interest, and also, showcasing there that women also need to come to the party. We need to also take up arms. We need to stand strong, stand firm, fight against the violence that's perpetuated against us. So, Blaine, a lot that has come out of KwaZulu-Natal. We've tackled politics, we've tackled the ongoing violence, and I suppose coming up to next week there'll be a lot more stories, national interest stories coming from the province. I hope you have found it very interesting in this KZN segment, but that's where we'll leave it today. It's back to you.
Such interesting perspective coming out there with regards to the issues against violence against women and children. Jayed-Leigh Paulse and the team, thank you very much indeed for your reporting, great reporting, the regional roundup of what's happening in KwaZulu-Natal. Stay warm in KZN, 21 degrees in KZN. People are freezing. Appreciate it from the team in KwaZulu-Natal. All right, we're going to take a quick break.